Welcome back to another episode of Fishing Without Bait, where we're having our continuing conversation with our new friend, Nick. I have a tattoo on my arm. I can't see it here, but it says "I choose," and those are the two most powerful words I believe that a human being has in their vocabulary. As most people live their lives on "I have to," "I need to," "I must," "I'd better." No, those are self-defeating words. No child's born with that vocabulary. Could you share with our audience how you moved aside from putting these unreasonable expectations on yourself?
Yeah, and that's something that I did work for a few years actually with my sponsor. As I was even 4 or 5 years into my recovery, and we had our check-in calls. We spoke through my life, and then he would push me at the end of a call, and he would say, "Nick, do you have any insecurities at all? If there was one part of your life which still is not great, what would that be?" And I would always say financial insecurities. It
Ah,
always came back to financial insecurities.
okay. Yes. Well, that's one of the promises. Fears of financial insecurity will leave us. So, tell us about this masculinity that you were never supposed to show weakness or vulnerability, or to say "I don't know." And the only way we learn is from failure, but it doesn't seem to be acceptable in the corporate world.
No, exactly, and that was not something that I did. I didn't show up saying that I had mistakes, but I was trying to find mistakes in others, in my teams. And I can even remember in Vietnam, where I was a managing director of a big fashion company, and I was told that to show that I'm a very strong leader. And we even set up one of our staff, someone who was in the finance department, who in procurement, by actually buying some printer ink from a supplier, which we knew we could track the transfer. And she fell for the bait. She added on some additional money for herself and pocketed that money. And
Uh,
as we caught her, we used her as an example. And I remember getting the security guards to call the police and handcuff her and walk her out in front of all the staff, because that would demonstrate to everyone that don't steal, don't do anything in the company, because then Nick will deal with it with handcuffs. And that was basically my style of leading.
hmm. Okay. Well, that certainly made an impression on people. Absolutely. So, Nick, could you share with the people on listening to this podcast when you realized that your job was not your identity?
Yeah, that came after my fall. So 3 years then tumbling down, going through my last savings, even cashing in my pension plan, and coming to the stage, where I basically wrote my testament, I wrote my will, and I started even, planning for my own funeral. I didn't see much light in my life. But out of there, then rebuilding myself and coming back as a second life, as I could call it, with, accepting myself for who I am, showing up authentically, not needing to have a fancy car. In fact, I haven't had a car the last 7 8 years. Um, Not needing a fancy apartment, don't need any of those glittery stuff. Um, when I just show up as I am, and at the places I want to be, that's when I can feel, more grounded and feeling more at ease with myself, and that's where I want to be.
Wow, that's incredible. So, what we often suggest to people, Nick, is that being a mother, father, brother, sister, son, daughter, employee, friend, whatever, doesn't define who you are. It's your values and your choices and your non negotiables that define who you are. And once we clarify those, we'll be a much better everything. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, share with us about that process of you actually redefining your values and choices.
Yeah, happy to do so. And I can mention as an example then, you know, I was quite distant from my ex-wife during our 13 years of marriage, and I certainly had never made any amends to her. I never took ownership for anything on my side, and the way I filed for divorce was basically no questions asked, just sign here. I was not ready for any discussion. We didn't have any group therapy. We didn't work on it. I was just a closed book. It's done. Simply because I was too scared to be open. I was too scared to be open and vulnerable and so on. But once in recovery and sobering up then and working on healing myself, I realized that I need to go back and make amends here. And that was a progress that I did with the help of my sponsor and people in the program, then to go back and heal that relationship, and also to talk to my parents about it, and really being open and taking full ownership for what I did, and the very, very non-human divorce that I suddenly filed for came out of the blue and no one could expect it. And but to really take that ownership for that, and what that has done then is, today with my ex-wife, we probably have the best relationship that we ever had, better than we were married. And as one evidence of this was, my son ended his high school. He's 16, our common son. He's 16 years old. He ended high school in Sweden, and last month, and I was there for the graduation. And even my ex-wife parents invited us for coffee after that at their house, which I think is a sign of, that the relationship can be healed. And they might not even have wanted to invite me 8-9 years ago to that function, because I wasn't a very nice person when I was still drinking and I hadn't found myself yet.
Well, the purpose of the 12 steps is the 12 steps says having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. So tell us about your transition, your spiritual awakening, Nick.
Yeah, and that was something I wasn't ready for. I didn't know that that was part of the 12-step program as I came in. Um, but I decided to shut up. I decided to sit and just listen. I also didn't put any pressure on myself to share and speak and share my views in the early meetings. It was just to show up and getting that habit of going for a walk, coming to meeting people, and starting there. As I was getting a sponsor and we came into the power greater than myself later on, I fully embraced it. And yes, I remember it was hard to go down on my knees the first time to pray, but I did it. I did it with full acceptance, and I still do that today, every day, and it's a big part of my life. And I should say that there's many of the men in my men's group who are really struggling with that, but I keep encouraging them and just say, just try it. You never know what you have nothing to lose from trying.
Well, it's the difference between religion and spirituality. That's one of the keystones of the 12 step group. Generally, what I tell my patients, Nick, is I say, okay, we're spiritual beings. We just happen to be having this human experience. And it's your enmeshment in this human experience that is really putting you sideways in your life. And I'll say, and I hope you grasp this concept, life is absurd. And once you grasp those three concepts, our work will be done.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I'm a big believer indeed in spirituality. I don't go into much of religions. I'm not because working in Asia, I have every different country every day. I can be in different countries with different religions, and I embrace them all. Whatever people believe, it's their thing. But I think spirituality, to have a power greater than ourselves to hand over to when the pressure is on and when life gets hard, is something that I can completely and totally recommend everyone to look for.
Well, when we learn how to step back and look at situations, Nick, rather than from them. So tell us about your group, the supporting organization, the Samaritans.
Yeah, so the SOS Samaritans is a suicide prevention agency in Singapore. It's a hotline which people can call when they have distress and so on. And that's the organization that I signed up for and supported then back a few years ago. Since then, I have moved on. I also teamed up and partnered up with many others in the space. And these days I run my own men's group, which is called Limitless. And it has not doesn't have to do with suicide prevention, but I would say it is. In one instance it is, because if we never share, if we don't have a safe space, then ultimately it can end up in suicide, as we see. But if people have a safe space which they are used to sharing when they are going through a difficult time, hopefully it doesn't go as far.
Yes, well, in our book, the AA book, it says that some people choose to make the ultimate sacrifice, and that is when they choose to take their life. That's a really powerful type of thing that you're doing. So let me ask you, when an executive or someone comes before you and they tell you, Nick, I've been through therapy, I've been through all these things, I don't think you can help me. How do you address that?
Yeah, it happens many times that we hear that, and what I do start with is at least inviting them to some group meetings, because sometimes getting the community, hearing others speak about their recovery, their journey, is what they need. That's why I run a men's group, and it's optional for all my coaching clients if they want to be part of it or not. But what I find is that once they hear that other men have also received support, they've gone through it, they were open to it, then typically they come around and they start to work on themselves eventually. But what I see is that some men take a long time. I have some men in my group who's been there for 3 years now, and they've only come a little while others really are hungry and want more of it, and they want it now. And let everyone take their time. And it's not, very, very hard from the outside to push or influence. It has to come from within.
Well, we model behavior. We model behavior for others. And usually, when somebody sits in front of me and says, "You can't help me, Jim," I'll just give them one sentence. I'll say, "Convince me." And if you can convince me, then I wish you well.
Yeah,
But nobody's been able to convince me yet at all. So where do you see your life going at? What's your ideas? What's your goals? What's your dreams, Nick?
Yeah, so at the moment, then I'm three-fourths or 75% into my studies at the School of Positive Psychology in Singapore. So I'm studying therapy, psychotherapy, and counseling. So I should be done by end of this year, and then do my practicum. So simply be able to help my clients a bit better. Coaching is great, but perhaps I need a little bit more. Because what I found was that once you come under the surface, there's quite some challenges there. So that's why I upskilled myself there. And I hope that this will also be valuable for the men's group and sharing the learnings there with them. So that's what lies ahead of me. And I also do quite a lot of workshops and trainings. My next mission in Asia will be out to the Maldives to do some work with the leadership teams at some resorts. So I'm very excited about that path as well.
Okay, very, very, very nice. Your life sounds exciting, Nick.
Oh, thank you.
Good way to, when you wake up, there's a difference. If you wake up in the morning and you just say, "Oh, another day," or you wake up in the morning and say, "Oh, another day." And I think that's the way you wake up in the morning, Nick.
Absolutely. And I'm fully embrace it. As I said, it's a second chance, second life. That's how I see it. And it's the life that, as we said also in the recovery program, it's a life beyond my wildest dreams.
So, how can a person hook up with your podcast, listen to you, purchase the book, and we'll put all this on our website, Nick.
Yeah, thank you for asking. And yeah, I'm quite active on LinkedIn if anyone is on there. And my book is on Amazon. The book is called Executive Loneliness. It's on Amazon, and it's also as an audiobook on Audible.
Oh, great, cool. So, when you're dealing with somebody, an executive, and they say, "This sounds really great, Nick. I don't have time to do it." How do you
Yeah,
how do you
the
answer
time.
that?
Yeah, time is always the one, right? And what I offer is as much flexibility as possible. I'm saying that we can do it in the evenings, we can do it on the weekends, whenever it works for you. And it's also about saving them time. It's a time that they invest in themselves to grow. I also work holistically at all the 8 different parts of the wheel of life. So it's not only about the professional work, and it's not only about the issue what they come in, but really to lift the whole life so they have a balanced life. That's what I'm trying to do for my clients.
Okay, that sounds really great. I often use a business term called return on investment, particularly when people are talking about relationships. I'll ask them, "What return are you getting on your investment in this relationship?" And quite often, it's not much. So, Nick, I've often found that people stay in relationships, they stay in jobs, they stay in friendships, they stay in locations far too long. How do you know when it's ready to step aside and move forward?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think in the past, I used to make all those decisions by myself without speaking. These days, I'm very, very open minded in that regard. I reach out to some of my mentors, some of my close friends. I talk about opportunities and so on. Really to just speak about it, get some different opinions before making the call. So I think the worst we can do is to keep it to ourselves and making the decisions without speaking to someone before we make the decision.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you're a lifetime learner, Nick.
There we go.
Always remain green and teachable. Remain green and teachable. That's a wish. Well, Nick, you've been absolutely delightful, and we'll put these links up on our website. And I have a number of Audible credits, so I'm going to get your book today, and I'm going to start to listen to it. And please don't be a stranger on this program. We usually try to catch up with our guests in maybe 9 months or a year to find out the progression of their life.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Oh, absolutely. So at the end of every podcast, we offer a free prescription, and that's fruits, nuts, and vegetables, and unplug your television and take up fishing. And for a truly mindful experience, we suggest that you fish without bait. Do a kindness for yourself and do a kindness for another. Forgive yourself and forgive another. If we're all not the divine's children, then none of us are. Be good to yourself today and every day. Namaste.
Please check out our website at fishingwithoutbait.com, where you can listen to the show, comment on our discussions, and find out where you can subscribe to our podcast. If you're interested in flying the colors of Fishing Without Bait, click the shop icon on our website. We have clothing, mugs, cell phone cases, and so much more. Show the world that you fish without bait. This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com.